One big inning wasn't enough as the Giants lost what was, to me, really a gut-wrenching game to the Philadelphia Phillies as they were going for a sweep. The umpiring was bad again, and Jarlín García, just given a lead, came in and allowed 4 runs, and the Giants lost by 1. So we'll break down everything that went wrong and vent a little bit next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes, Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about these Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And coming up on today's show, we're going to vent a little bit. This was, for me, a really frustrating loss to the Philadelphia Phillies. You had a chance to sweep. At first, it was looking like the story was just going to be a little bit of an opportunity in the first inning, as the Giants continue to do. They keep, in this series at least, setting the stage in the first inning and not getting anything for it. And then Aaron Nola settling in. And I thought, Carlos Rodon gave up a couple runs. Maybe Aaron Nola just pitches a gem and it's a tough luck loss that way. But the Giants came roaring back and they scored 5 runs in the sixth inning against Aaron Nola. And they took a 5-2 lead. But immediately in the bottom of the 6th inning, Jarlín García came in for Carlos Rodon, who had thrown 98 pitches. And Garcia, who had not allowed an earned run all season long, tying the franchise record for most consecutive appearances scoreless to start a season with 17. He comes in and allows 4 earned runs in a third of an inning. So it was just frustrating, right? You battle, you get a 5-2 lead, and then you give it up just immediately after that. And then the Giants couldn't get anything going really the rest of the way. And part of the reason for that was that the home plate umpire, just for the second straight night, did not have a good game. And I am recording this shortly after the game on Wednesday night, and this will be coming out on Thursday, so I haven't had a chance to look yet at this umpire scorecards report that comes out every day on Twitter. It is not an account affiliated with Major League Baseball. This is just somebody has taken it upon themselves to look at the breakdown of how the umpire performed, at least as it pertains to the strike zone we're seeing on television. Now, in reality, the umpires get additional space beyond that box. They have a margin of error in which they're allowed to call strikes, essentially. If it's out of that box, but it's close, those don't get counted against them in their official report card. But we are going to vent a little bit about the strike zone. I don't want to come across as like making an excuse of the strike zone, but actually I kind of don't care. Because I think the point that gets maybe not completely understood is just how critical these calls really are. We're not talking about tiny fractions of a run being at stake here. We are talking about whole runs being taken on or off the board based on how an umpire performs really in that specific game. And yesterday, well, you're listening on Thursday, today on Wednesday, and then the day prior, Tuesday's game in which the Giants won 7-4, we talked about this on yesterday's show or 2 days, whatever. Yet the last show we did, that the scorecard for the umpire said that the change in expected run value based on the performance of the umpire missing calls was 2.7 runs in favor of the Phillies. So we are literally talking about almost 3 runs being added to. You're basically playing the Phillies and you're playing the umpires who gave the Phillies almost 3 additional runs. Now, I do want to point out that what this is doing is looking at the change in expected run values. It's not looking at what actually transpired after the missed call. And I think that that's the correct way to do it. And you can look this up yourself, right? there's something called RE24, and it's the run expectancy for the 24 different base out states. Okay, so that sounds complicated, but if you're a baseball fan, you intuitively kind of know this already. But the 24 base out states are basically like all the different possible states with no outs. You have nobody on, a guy on first, guy on second, guy on first and second, first and third, bases loaded, second and third, right? And then do that for 1 out, 2 outs as well. So there's 24 of those different possible base out states. And what we can look at is like, and you look at the count, right? You look at, there's the base out state and the different counts. And you can look at historically, let's get simple here. Mike Yastrzemski leading off an inning against Aaron Nola, it was a full count. So it gets really simple in this case. The pitch was a ball. There's no question about it. Everybody knows it except the home plate umpire. That's what's so aggravating to me, is that we know it. The catcher knows it. Yastrzemski knows it. The pitcher knows it. The only person who doesn't know it is the home plate umpire. And he's the one who gets to make the call. Now, I want to be clear. I say this every time I vent about the strike zone, that umpiring is extremely difficult. And I don't think any of us could do even close to a better job. I'm very confident that 99.9% of people, if we tried to do this, would do a worse job than these guys do. And the simple fact is that it's too difficult. And for the computers and the, Statcast Hawkeye cameras, it's not hard at all. And so I'm just tired of it. I'm done with it, because we can sit here at home and watch and see it's clearly a ball, but they call it a strike, and it changes the game. Okay, so getting back to what I was saying about the base out state. When you miss a call like that, you call it strike 3 when in fact it was ball 4. What you can simply look at is the run expectancy of a runner on first base with nobody out, because that's what it would have been if it was called a ball, versus what is the run expectancy basically on average. If you just look at in Major League Baseball this year, essentially, we don't actually look at this year, but you can adjust for the run scoring environment and the league average weighted on base average. You can look at pretty accurately what typically do teams do when they inherit runner on first, or when they have runner on first, nobody out, versus bases empty, 1 out. And that's what that call did. And the run expectancy with a runner on first and nobody out, I actually don't have it pulled up as I'm venting about it, is 0.784 runs. So almost a run, but less than a run, but still pretty good shot. You're going to get maybe around a run out of that situation, right? Sometimes you score, sometimes you don't. On average, you get a little bit less than a run out of that situation. But nobody on and 1 out, the run expectancy is 0.229. So much worse. You're likely not going to get anything. And what we simply look at is the difference between runner on first, nobody out, and runner nobody on and 1 out. And the difference there is 0.555 runs. So in essence, in theory, right, it doesn't always work out this way, but in theory, like on average, that call cost the Giants over half a run. And to me, it's shocking that, I just don't think we fully understand. I don't think everybody understands this. 2 calls like that in a game is worth more than a solo homer. So if the Phillies got another call like that, it's better to have 2 calls like that than to hit a solo homer. Okay, in reality, you'll take the real run versus the theoretical run, but on average, it's a better outcome than a solo homer. So these calls have huge implications, and it wasn't just that call. It was all night long. He was consistently giving the pitch way off the plate away to left-handed hitters, but he wasn't really giving it for the Giants. And so anyway, I'm recording this before I get the scorecard, but I'm pretty confident that the Thursday morning scorecard is going to say well over a run in favor of the Phillies again. And this is a 1-run game. You lost the game by 1 run, and the umpires are just taking runs off the board for you with these calls. And I just can't stand it anymore. Unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with it at least through the end of 2022. I have been venting about this. I mentioned I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015. I have been talking about this since 2015, and I'm just so sick and tired of it, especially now that we see the strike zone on every single pitch and they miss them all the time because it's a hard job. I'm not really blaming the umpires. I am blaming Major League Baseball for allowing this to continue. This has to change, and it has to change in 2023, or else I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep watching and I'm going to keep being really upset about it. So anyway, coming up next, I want to take a look back on the month of May and tie it in with this game itself and how the Giants, it might seem like their issue maybe has been scoring runs at times, but really that's not been the issue. It's been the pitching, and this was the case in this loss yesterday to the Phillies. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Random example, Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 from a chain store and just $216 from Rock Auto. It's really a no-brainer. I have done it myself over half a dozen times where I just look up the part myself, buy it, save a bunch of money, and have the dealership install it if you want. And just, it's a no-brainer to buy the part for less. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, as promised, we are going to continue venting a little bit. I am upset about this loss because, like I said, you're facing two opponents. And I said initially I don't want to come across as like blaming the umpires, but I am. You're facing two opponents. It is hard enough to face Aaron Nola when you don't have the umpires taking expected runs off the board. And let's be honest, the Giants have been overall a significantly better than average offensive team, pretty much any way you look at it. I know they've been inconsistent, and in some games they get shut down, and in some games big scores have kind of inflated the numbers. But when you break it down, they're scoring. Last I looked, they were third in runs per game, behind only the Dodgers and the Mets, two of the better teams in baseball right now, if not the number 1 and 2 teams in baseball right now. And their team weighted runs created plus was among the best in the game as well. Their on base percentage is among the best in the game. And frankly, it wasn't consistent in this game, but they had another solid offensive night, scoring 5 runs in a game started by the Phillies co-ace. I mean, Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. But Aaron Nola is a good pitcher. His ERA went up to 3.92 with this start. So he came into the game having a solid season. And so it's hard enough to... Well, where was I going with the fact that the Giants' offense has been good? I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know exactly what I was saying there, but it is hard enough to play the major league team when you don't have umpires literally like tacking on multiple runs. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 2+ runs when we look at this expected change in expected run values based on the umpire scorecard. Anyway, now that I've vented quite a bit, we have an important favor to ask from you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take your audience survey, go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. Thank you for your help. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about A, the details of the game, and B, just a trend for the Giants, because really, it's funny. I'm not like talking bad about Mike Krukow at all, but it's funny because he's a former pitcher, and in the middle of May, when the Giants were struggling, he keeps talking about when your offense is struggling to score runs, you just have to do this, that, and the other. But in reality, they weren't really struggling to score runs. They did have some stretches, but he was even saying that when the offense was just fine. Like they had just scored 13 runs, and he was saying that. But really, it's been the pitching. If you look back at the numbers for the pitching staff in the month of May, which is a month in which they had their first losing month since August 2020, it's kind of irrelevant to like break the season into months. We do it. It's kind of weird that we do that. Like there's no actual change from one month to the other. It's all one big kind of continuous season. It's just like an subjective cutoff point when you're breaking the season down into roughly 30 game segments. So that I don't really care. Like what I care about is the sum of it all. But if we do look back at May, we see that that was when a lot of the struggles were happening. Although they did end up going 13-14. So their first below 500 month since August 2020, and it couldn't be less below 500, right? One more win and it's an above 500 month. And really, they left many wins out there. They could have. It was a rough month, and yet it wasn't that bad, is kind of what I'm trying to say. But when we look at the numbers, I mean, Dave Fleming, I'm going to give him credit for saying this. I hadn't looked. I knew it was the case, but he triggered me wanting to talk about this tonight. Their ERA in the month of May was 5.44. Now, we say this every year. I feel like nobody ever listens or remembers. Hopefully, one of you, that's all I want, is one person to remember this next year. That think about if this was April, right? We always we care so much about April numbers because it's all that we have. And then May comes along, and then somebody who was bad is good, and we still think of them as bad, even though they were good in May. But if you switch them, if someone who was good in April and then struggles in May, you kind of disregard their May and you still think of them as good. And Jock Peterson kind of falls into that category. Very good in April, struggled in May. But if it was reversed, who knows what we would be thinking about Jock Peterson. So anyway, the Giants pitching, if this had been their April numbers, we would be kind of panicking about the pitching. But then they had such a good April that it kind of masked how much of a struggle May was for the earned run average. So 5.44, that is just not getting the job done. And I would venture to say it's not worst. It's second worst in Major League Baseball. And that's just unacceptable when you look at some of the names on this pitching staff. You've got a starting staff with Rodon and Webb and Wood, and Junis has been pitching well. And I want to say DeSclafani, but he hasn't been here. I'm honestly blanking on Alex Cobb. So Alex Cobb, yeah, he had a 6.04 ERA. That's the thing, though, is that a lot of these guys, the peripherals were just significantly better. And so it wasn't really cause for too much concern, because what I saw, especially when you combine the April numbers and the May numbers, is just this trend where the ERA was much higher than it should be, essentially. So how does this happen? The left on base percentage for the Giants was only 62.6%, which was the lowest rate in Major League Baseball. And I know some people, when you hear this, you're probably immediately thinking they're just unclutch, they're bad pitchers or something. That's why that they're only stranded in May 62.6% of their base runners. And what I'm here to tell you is that we basically know what this number is going to end up at the end of the year. And that is going to be around 72%. And so they were about 10 points below what you would expect. And part of that has been defense. Defense struggled in May. There's no doubt about it. And that's part of what is going on here. But I just wanted to come on here and say, the main reason for the Giants' struggles in the month was simply allowing too many runs. And tonight, if you're listening on Thursday, yesterday in the loss against the Phillies, that's what it was. I mean, the Giants got 5 runs, but they allowed 6. And Jarlín García, that's the thing too, is this season, it really has just felt like at various times, just something goes wrong when you need it to go right. And they just haven't been able to sync up good fortune and good baseball and pitching well when they're hitting and hitting well when they're not pitching. All in all, I mean, what are they? 27 and 22. So it's not disaster, but it is a little bit disappointing, and they generally have been struggling to kind of push any more above 500 for the last month. Like I said, they were 1 game under in May, and so now with the loss on June 1st, they're 2 games under 500 over their last month plus a day or whatever. So it has not been easy, and this is just another example. Like Jarlín García, all you had to do, if you're going to allow your first run of the year, make it 1, don't make it 4, but he gives up 4. He gives up 2 home runs to a couple of left-handed hitters. What is the probability of that? Not very high. But it's like just what they didn't need, and it's exactly what happened. So even with this performance, 4 earned runs in a third of an inning, his ERA is still just 2.08. But he's a guy, I mean, even though yesterday we were kind of celebrating his scoreless outing, but he wasn't sharp, and he got helped out by, who was it, Gene Segura, chasing like 1.5 feet outside the strike zone on what would have otherwise been ball 4. So the bullpen has not been particularly good in 2022. And when I look at the numbers for the bullpen in the month of May, how about this? 6.26 earned run average from the relievers in the month of May. So like I said, though, I don't really care April, May. I want to just combine it all. And when we combine it all, the Giants bullpen ERA 4.38. And this is before last night when that number is going to go up. And so again, the peripherals are better. There are some guys who have just been massively underperforming their peripherals, including Tyler Rogers, even John Brebbia after a really rough outing a couple days ago. And Jarlín García is a guy who was underperforming the peripherals. So this kind of balanced out for him in this game. But unfortunately, it all came at once. And so the 4 earned runs really were costly. So coming up next, I want to get you set for the series against the Marlins, and why this is part of why this was a disappointing series for me, like such a disappointing series, is because even though the Marlins don't have a good record, this is not going to be an easy series. So I'm going to talk about why, and we'll get you set, and we'll talk about some roster moves that the Giants made in addition. All of that in just a minute. But first, whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. If you're looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. To me, that is a game changer. These days, COVID kind of pushed us all in this direction, but for me, I don't want to spend a bunch of time in an old school kind of jewelry store, milling around, not knowing what I'm doing, having to talk and kind of figure it out on the fly and maybe feel pressure from a salesperson. I want to do it from the comfort of my home if possible, and Blue Nile makes that possible. So make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Giants listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use code LOCKEDON, that's code LOCKEDON, plus every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace at BlueNile.com today. All right, as promised, we are going to get you set for the Miami Marlins. It is unfortunately, in my opinion, not going to be an easy series, even though the Marlins record, their game is ongoing at the time of this recording. They're in Colorado playing the second game of a doubleheader, and the score is 11-11. So, look, I don't hope for injury or anything like that, but I do hope for many extra innings and some kind of brutal loss that is just a gut punch to the team and a long flight across the country from Denver back to Miami. So I guess the Giants have that going for them, although the Marlins did win big in game 1 of the doubleheader tonight. The score was 14-1. And so I think that their record is a little bit deceptive, actually a lot deceptive. They have a plus 17 run differential, which is really close to what the Giants have. And that's without accounting for whatever happens tonight. So if they end up winning by a few runs, if they win by 4, they have the same run differential as the Giants, and they will have played one more game than the Giants up to this point. But to be at plus 17 and to have a record of 20-27 tells me there's quite a bit of misfortune and bad luck. And it's not that simple. There's always more to it, and that's always kind of lazy analysis. But look, think of the season as one big game. They're winning by 17, and yet their record is a losing record. And so yeah, it could be that they win some blowouts and lose some tight games, but the reality is their record is 20-27, but they've outscored their opponents. Giants have scored 50 more runs. Well, not counting the 11 tonight. So it's close to 50, let's say 40 more runs than the Marlins. And yet the Marlins have allowed, again, not counting tonight, about 50 fewer runs than the Giants. And so that's what's going to be tough to me. I think you're going to go into Miami, which is a difficult place to hit. And a theme of the year is that the baseball is harder to hit home runs with. Home runs are down in a big way. And so used to be that Miami, it was a tough place to hit home runs, but lately it's been easier. But now I think it's going to be tough again. And so not only is it a tough place to hit, but you're also facing some elite starting pitching. I think in the first game, you're going to face Sandy Alcantara. Giants definitely had to face him in that opening series. I believe the Giants played the Marlins to start the 2022 season and won 2 out of 3. But Alcantara is one of the better pitchers in the game. And so anytime you've just got to go in there and face him, it is not an easy task. And yeah, it's going to be Alcantara versus Alex Wood. And to me, Marlins at home with Alcantara advantage Marlins in game 1. And this is a 4-game series, mind you. So you're going to see multiple good Marlins pitchers. They're known for having some good pitching. But Alcantara has a 2.00 ERA on the season. So he's got a good ground ball rate. He's not going to blow you away with strikeouts. I mean, I was about to say strikeout stuff, but he does have very nasty stuff if memory serves, right? This is the guy, yeah, his average fastball is 97.6. So he's got basically a power sinker and gets a lot of ground balls, tough to hit homers, and just it's tough to hit against this guy. His career average on balls in play against him is 268. He seems to be a guy who can sustain a better than average, lower than average on balls in play. So he's just a very good pitcher, period. So that's going to be tough. And then also in this series, you're going to see probably Eliezer Hernandez, which is a better matchup against Alex Cobb. So I like the Giants on Friday, but Thursday's going to be tough. And then Pablo Lopez against Logan Webb on Saturday. And Lopez has a 1.83 earned run average, and just kind of similar to Alcantara, he's just a tough pitcher and a ground ball guy, a guy who can get ground balls and is just tough to hit. And so it is not going to be easy. You hope that maybe you can just hold the Marlins down. That is going to be a key for me in this series. I think the Giants will find a way to scratch across some runs. They seem to do it generally. Even in this loss, they get 5, just one big inning. Wilmer Flores hit a big home run. There were more roster moves. Jason Vossler called up. Elliot Ramos optioned. Fairchild, optioned. Sam Long called up because they needed some bullpen help with having to go deep into extra innings. Well, 11 innings the night before. But anyway, I just think the offense will be able to scratch across some runs, maybe. But the key is going to be, can you keep the Marlins to 3 runs or fewer? I think if you can, you're going to see some wins in those games. But if they're getting 4 or 5 runs, it's going to be tough to win. And another consistent issue, I don't have the numbers, but the Giants fall behind a lot. It seems like every night they're behind 1-2 to nothing in the first 3-4 innings every night lately. And so that needs to stop. They need to throw up some zeros. They need their pitchers to go out there and give them 4, 5, 6 scoreless innings and let the offense scratch across a few runs and have a lead. And then, of course, yesterday in this loss to the Phillies, they had a lead for a half second and then gave it all up. So, look, at the end of the day, Giants are 5 games over 500. They haven't played all that well, and yet they're still in a playoff position, and there's a ton of season left. But just wanted to get you set and set expectations. Even though the record isn't great for the Marlins, they're a tough team to play, and they always are tough on the Giants, it seems. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 league-wide podcast Locked On MLB on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, smash the thumbs up button and give it 5 stars if you wouldn't mind. It helps me out so much. So easy as well. And thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Hopefully talking about a win, but it's going to be tough. Thanks again for listening. Stay Locked On Giants.